Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. As we wrap up spring practice, talk some recruiting, talk some hoops, plenty of other things to jump into as well on this Tuesday edition of the podcast with Rob Lewis and Austin Price. I'm Brent Hubbs. Again, we want to thank our friends at Blue Water Climate Control for their continued support of the site. And they want to thank you, the Volquest listener, for all that you've done to help them promote their site and all the referrals that you've given them as well. So in light of that, and show their appreciation, they're giving you a discount on all service and repairs, which is really good because it's time to turn on your AC. This week it's going to be in the 80s after being freezing last week. Gotta love East Tennessee. And unfortunately, that AC might not work like it should when you turn it on. We'll find out this week when it gets warm. When that happens, you need to do what others are doing. Call Blue Water Climate Control. Check out their reviews online. You'll see story after story of how other companies tried to fix it, but it was Blue Water Climate Control who finally got it right. Call the guys who do the right repair the right way the first time. Blue Water Climate Control. Give them a buzz at 865-299-2290 or check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. All right, to spring practice we go, putting a bow tie on that. Rob, I'll start with you. What's your bow tie on Josh Heupel's first spring at Tennessee?
Well, I don't think you can take a ton from the spring game itself, but I think the one tangible, I mean, when you're talking about personnel, and but I think the one tangible thing that you can take away is style of play. I mean, he really is going to want to play at warp speed. I mean, the last three quarters matter with the way they handle the clock, but the first quarter, both offense combined, I believe, that's moving quick. And by my count, it appeared, unless it was a big gainer, chunk play, I think they were back, lined up, ready to snap it again within about 9 or 10 seconds in most cases. So to me, style of play is legit. I mean, it is what is advertised. And secondly, I might be reading too much into it because of COVID and we're not around them all the time. Like we don't see as much as we would in a normal year. But I feel like this team is really bought in. I think they really respond to the way Heupel is doing things. And I think he's recognized that this is a group of guys who football has not been a lot of fun for a while. And I think he's really addressed that, I think he's catered his approach as a coach with that in mind.
Oh, I agree with you, Rob. I mean, is Tennessee going to, win games in the fall because they played dodgeball and then they had a home run derby like they did on Monday over at the softball field? No, but I mean, are they going to, be bought in more, which could contribute to them, winning a possession, which helps you win a game? Sure. I think that, they're really having fun with each other. I know for a fact some stuff in the past, not just Jeremy's staff, but other staffs as well. A lot of this Twitter stuff has been forced. And, and I'm not saying that, that some of it's not forced in this instance, but I don't think all of it is, not like it was before. And so, I do think that he's made, this spring fun, made it enjoyable. They've got work in. They've got a lot of work and a long way to go to get to where they want to be on both sides of the ball. But I'm with Rob. I think that just the culture is not built in a day, but I do think that the overall mindset is totally different with this group. Again, does it equate to more wins? Time will tell. But I do think that, they're enjoying college football and enjoying, being teammates with one another.
All right, little devil's advocate here. I agree with both of you. I do. I mean, I think that this team does like it. But do we have to be careful from the standpoint of how many times over the course of the last 4 coaching changes have we said Coach X is pushing the right buttons?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
The right buttons. I mean, it is. And again, I don't want to sound like that jaded guy, but is there a thought that maybe there's a trap that, we've heard all this before? I agree it feels different, but playing both sides of it, you know what I'm saying? I mean, well,
it's like the old strength coach, Hubs. Every strength coach is, the one that's going to take them to the promised land, baby. I mean, I agree with you. I think you can fall into that some. There's no doubt about it, because as you pointed out, and you pointed out probably more eloquently than anybody I've heard, just how, Tennessee literally Philip was the old guy. They went to the young whippersnapper in Lane, but then he was to California. Then they went to the Southern gentleman in Dooley. Like everybody always goes to the extreme. So, last year's group, they had no fun at all. And not just because of COVID, but, even year before that. I mean, it wasn't like they were, singing Kumbaya around the campfire. And then all of a sudden, this group's doing all these quote fun things and fun activities. Again, you can overblow it a little bit, but I do think that it does help the mindset of a bunch of kids that were probably beat down.
Rob, let me ask you this, because you cover basketball extensively on a daily basis, and I don't want to compare necessarily Rick Barnes's culture to Josh Heupel's culture, with Heupel only being on the job 100 days or so, less than 100 days, I guess, at this point. But you've seen a culture that there's a real bond off the court. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of, camaraderie, type deal. Then it's obviously all business when you're on the court. How important is that for student athletes, that it's not, that it's more than just, you're a robot on the practice field, or you're just the football player for the coach?
I think it's vital. And that opinion is informed by watching how Coach Barnes does business. And by that, I mean, I've never seen coach football, basketball, either one, just constantly get on guys aggressively, abrasively, calling them out, staying in their ear, just grinding on them. I mean, sometimes, not confrontationally, like in their face or physical or anything, but just never, ever letting things slide. And I don't think you can coach kids like that if, when it's over, you're not, joking around with them in the locker room, putting your arm around them, making sure that they know you care about them. I don't think you can just be the drill sergeant and then not be the nice uncle, when practice is over.
It's interesting. It's been an interesting spring from that. I mean, that's probably my biggest takeaway, Austin, when you look at it, is just the work that this staff has put in. And we talked about it when Josh Heupel was hired. You've mentioned this multiple times. He goes by every desk when he leaves at the end of the day, or over the morning when he arrives, and says hello, or at the end of the day when people are leaving, he makes sure he tells them, have a great night, or go enjoy your family, or whatever. I mean, he's clearly about relationships, and that's clearly been as big of a priority for him as it's been putting in a high tempo offense this spring.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that he's really kind of, I think you're smart too, as well, to embrace this roster. I mean, let's face it, there's not one of them is a Josh Heupel guy. Like he didn't sign this recruiting class. He came in after the recruiting class was signed. Think about it. Jeremy, when he first got here, he had 20 kids that were, quote, his kids. There's not one of these kids that is Josh Heupel's kid. None. So, I mean, I think you have to come in and embrace this group, and embrace, Tennessee and the people around it, and, the secretaries that work for you. I mean, look, the old notion, everybody's got to be rolling in the same direction. They said that they've said that like the last multiple coaches. It's never
multiple
happened,
ADs,
really.
Multiple coordinators, multiple strength coaches, multiple trainers, multiple nutritionists, and on and on and on. But you're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But you know what I'm saying. I mean, so I mean, they're trying to, you still have to work to try to get that, even if it, seems far-fetched at times. So, he's come in and to me, he's pushed the right buttons. Now, again, does that equate to success? I don't know. I mean, there's still a cloud over the program. I don't think the sun's coming out tomorrow. At least, and when I say that, I don't mean this year. I just mean tomorrow, as in tomorrow being Wednesday. I don't think they're finding out tomorrow. Yeah, it's a one-year bowl ban and they lost 12 scholarships. They're not going to find that out for a while. And so they had something they have to continually have to battle. The dead period don't end for another 30 plus days. So again, it's something they have to continue to battle. But I mean, he's pushed all the right buttons internally with just getting to know people. I think that he has had time for people. He's taken time around the water cooler and talk to people. And, from all accounts, everybody I've talked to, whether it's me talking to Josh occasionally or people that are around the building, he's very comfortable in his own skin, and it's not forced.
You know what? One thing I like about him, and I'm not blaming Jeremy for doing this. I might have done the same thing in his shoes, but Jeremy made sure to get it out there just how big of a hole the program was in, like all the shortcomings with the roster. And I'm not saying he was making excuses, but he wanted people to know what kind of challenge he was facing. Heupel, it seems like he's just, this is my team. Let's do the best we can.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that
no year zero.
Yeah, well, year zero, one of those had those, but you're right. I mean, I think one of Jeremy's, mistakes, if you will, and I don't want to reflect on his entire deal, but he spent a lot of time telling you everything that was wrong at Tennessee compared to what it was like where they were winning a championship at Alabama. Didn't have this, didn't have that. We got to get this, we got to get that. Whereas, Josh Heupel's coming from Central Florida where they don't have as much there as he's got here in terms of resources. And so I think that he has embraced it and obviously has done everything he can to instill some confidence in a group that's, pretty beat up after 3-7 and pretty beat up in general after a couple of years of football. So, or a year of football, I should say. So we'll see. I mean, I think we all agree that it's been a nice 100-day start for Josh Heupel, which is 100 days and a long, long marathon, not even close to being 100 days in any kind of sprint. Austin, you said that, this roster is not Josh Heupel's roster, and it's not. He is bringing in a quarterback that some will perceive to be his quarterback because Joe Milton is transferring in to play in this offense after Josh Heupel is here. What do we make of Joe Milton's arrival at Tennessee, which we knew was coming?
He's not coming here to set the bench. He's not coming here to be just a solid backup to whoever wins the job. He's coming here to win the job, and they're bringing him in here to win the job. Does that mean he wins it? No. He's still got to go out and perform. I mean, they're not just going to play Joe Milton just because. I mean, if Harrison Bailey's the right guy for the job, Harrison Bailey will start. If Brian Maurer is the right guy for the job, Brian Maurer will start. And contrary to the popular or to the some popular belief of on the message board, I don't care who wins the starting quarterback job. I'm tired of watching bad quarterback play. I'd just like to see a game where there's not a throw made by a Tennessee quarterback that results in a touchdown for the other team. It seems like it's happened way too often the last 4 years. So you just have to get it right. Like that's the biggest thing. No matter who it is, if it's Harrison Bailey, Brian Maurer, Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton, if they bring back Zach Jancic to throw to Jack Jancic, they've got to figure out who the quarterback is and go with the best guy and hope they kind of, draw 21 because they've got to get lucky and find, and I think it is a little bit luck involved, find that perfect formula at the quarterback position to maybe see if they can get some traction overall.
Rob, we talk about, and we spent some time talking about all the things Josh Heupel's done right. Over the course of the next 100 days leading up to the start of this season, the decision at quarterback is the most significant thing, the most significant decision that he and his staff are going to make. I mean, you are what you are on defense. To make this offense work, you got to get a quarterback who can execute and get the job done. That decision is going to be vital to how much of a jump start there is to the rebuild. Don't you think that's the most important decision he has to make?
Not even close. I don't think anything else even is in the same zip code. And, you basically have 5 guys and you don't have anything that looks like a slam dunk at all. And, you're bringing in a guy who you expect to compete, who didn't have the benefit of spring practice and, getting to learn your system. And he's going to want to compete for the job. So, it's not an ideal situation, but just looking at Heupel's track record, I'll be surprised if they don't get serviceable play now from the quarterback spot. Now, do they get, what does that translate? Does that translate into 6 wins, 7 wins? I don't know, but I'll be with what he's done in his career. I'll be surprised if there is not improvement made at that position production wise, no matter who it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. It'll be interesting on Milton to see how quickly he can learn this offense and the tempo of this offense without the opportunity to practice in it before he jumps headfirst into a quarterback competition with just a handful of days to try to win the job going into the season opener.
Here's the thing. Tennessee still just got, at the end of the day, they've got so many questions left to answer at that quarterback position, no matter who it is. Caden Salter didn't go through spring. That's his own fault. Hendon Hooker, as everyone's noted, doesn't push the ball down the field. Brian Mauer's inconsistent. Harrison Bailey, I know he had the nice spring game, but on the whole, it wasn't like he did that every time they rolled out there for practice and did 11-on-11 work. It's not like he did that in the major scrimmages they had. He was not as good in those instances. So he's got to learn to be more consistent. And then, Joe Milton, and you can kind of lump Hendon Hooker within there as well. They left their previous stop for a reason, and so like that doesn't mean you can't, kind of rejuvenate yourself and rebound at another location and be much better, because you can. There are plenty of instances like that. But it's not like Tennessee's all of a sudden got some elixir over there that, oh, there we go, we're good. To me, there's just so many questions left to be answered with that quarterback position. And really, to me, the number one question is anybody going to leave? Because I don't think Bailey's leaving now. I'd be surprised if Hooker does, especially with his activity on Twitter. And then that leaves Brian Mauer and Caden Salter. Does Salter get antsy because he didn't go through spring and look to go back home to Texas? Does Mauer, because, Milton's here and Harrison Bailey had a strong spring game, does he get antsy and leave? I just think there's so many questions.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt. There's tons of questions at that position and tons of, and listen, you talk about the magic elixir. Everybody thought the magic elixir arrived with Jim Chaney a couple of years ago and that he was going to fix it and make it all better immediately. And obviously that didn't happen as well. So what that position turns into and what it looks like come August is going to be the biggest storyline for Tennessee. All right, let's talk outside quarterback before we jump into a couple of quick hoops things and recruiting things to wrap up the podcast here. Let's take quarterback off the conversation, off the table from the conversation. Who builds off this spring the most offensively and defensively, and who needs a huge summer offensively, defensively? Give me a couple of individuals. Who wants to start?
Somebody at linebacker.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say somebody at linebacker. I don't think it mattered, whether it's Banks or Joseph or whoever, Byron Young. But somebody at that second level on defense, I think, has got to be able to give them something. It has to be something besides an average player, SEC player.
All right, who's carrying the most momentum out of spring? Non-quarterback. Based on what you saw, Rob. Based on what you saw and read.
Callaway, perhaps.
Okay, I got you.
And I think that one of those guys had to step up at receiver. One of those sophomores beside Hyatt, and I think it looks like he has.
All right, Austin. Let's go to you. Who needs the spring, or who needs a great summer for this team?
I'll go Jimmy Holiday. I know for a fact that he's impressed the coaching staff. In his limited work wearing a black jersey, but he needs because what Callaway did, as Rob noted, what Cedric Tillman did over the course of spring, Jalen Hyatt is going to always be a factor. Bayless Jones, and then a guy like Anderson Kobe who came in and made a little bit of a splash. I think Jimmy Holiday needs to have a good summer because I think he can really help this football team. As far as, a guy that who wants to continue to, build off of it, I'll go Anderson Kobe. I mean, he came out of nowhere and, I think, really burst onto the scene and could be a really pleasant surprise this fall. I will add one more that I think needs to have a big summer, and that's K-Ron, because, he had a nice close to spring, talking to people over there. I think there was going late in the week, I think there was a strong notion that he was going to be coming out with that, quote, first team offensive line that had Cooper and Cade and Jerome Carvin and Darnell. And then they made a late switch back to Dane Davis, I think to reward Dane for a solid spring. But I mean, I think Kayron is someone the staff feels like talent-wise could potentially take over if he gets healthy. He's, again, it's something he's always struggled with through his time here, and he was not fully healthy this spring. And so I think that he needs to have a big summer. Defensively, man, I think you're hoping that Tyler Barron continues to build, because you really need him to be really good. And then I think, the guy that's, got to have a big summer is Alante Taylor, because he did not look good in the spring game, and he's got talent. It's just a matter of pointing him in the right direction.
I think for me, defensively, the guy who needs to have a great summer for this team is Elijah Simmons, because I just don't know where – I mean, we don't know where Darrell Middleton is going to be, or if he's going to be with this team, or whatever he's doing at this point in time. Aubrey Solomon's always banged up. What's his status going to be? Who's going to be the inside guys for this team on the defensive line? I think there's a belief that Elijah Simmons is the most talented if he can get his weight in check. I think this is a huge summer for Elijah for a chance to be a starter. I think Tennessee needs Elijah to have a great summer, because I think he is needed as much as anybody on that defense. And I think you're saying – I mean, because of the unknowns inside, I think that's why you're seeing Tennessee for the last 10 days be as active as they have been in the transfer portal, looking for defensive linemen, offering defensive linemen opportunities. Austin, it feels like, we've talked all spring about how many would they take, what would they do. It feels like they would be very comfortable taking a linebacker and a defensive lineman in the transfer portal. It feels so much like that's what they want to do in the transfer portal right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're going to get Juwan Mitchell. That's coming. I mean, that's he very comfortable. With Tennessee, loves the opportunity. He is a 2 to play 2 with the possibility of getting a year back for some reason. That's something that several schools were looking into for him. And then they wanted the kid at Western Kentucky. He ends up going to UCF to play for his old coach down there. So they would, which was a defensive lineman. They would love to add another defensive lineman. I think that tells you what they think of their current group of defensive linemen. Probably tells you what Rodney thinks of their current group of defensive linemen. That he's really pushing to get another quality body if he can find one.
Well, and again, you got a lot of unknowns there, because you don't know what's going to happen with Darrell Middleton, who was not at the spring game, and obviously they had a bunch of guys who weren't dressed for that spring game as well. So that's a position where Tennessee's got to become serviceable, at least, if they're going to have a chance to be a defense this fall that can win in the red zone, force some turnovers here, because they're going to give up some yards. I think we all know about that. So and see that forthcoming. So this spring's over. Kind of tied it up with some fun today. It's in the weight room, finish out the semester, a little bit of a break. And then June 1st, it cranks back up with the full summer workout, full summer plan. And we'll see who can make the big strides. And we'll also see who else jumps into portal, or if they get anybody else out of the portal. We'll continue to watch all of that moving forward. Austin, quickly on the recruiting front, had several guys in for the spring game, some in the 21 class, 22, 23 class. Given the weather and given the fact that you couldn't visit with coaches, not a bad day for Tennessee in terms of having some guys here to watch that thing. Better than I thought it was going to be, personally.
Yeah, I mean, they got the 3 kids in from Milton, Mo Clipper, someone they really like. Obviously, Jordan McDonald, the running back. And then, I don't know their chances at getting LT Overton, the highly coveted defensive end from Milton. But, I mean, you got him up here. Like, that don't hurt. And so, and he, of course, he's a 23. So, you had some solid, decent players here. Brody Foley was here again. I mean, I think Brody Foley would like to jump in right here and now if Tennessee had let him. The question is what are they going to do at the tight end spot? I mean, they're bringing him in for an official in June. They're bringing in the kid from Nebraska in June. They've not yet offered Jackson Long. I think they want him to come to camp. And then do they look at, potentially a transfer at tight end? I mean, it wouldn't shock me. if they landed somebody at that position either. And they really love Miles Campbell. So on the whole, Tennessee, I thought, did have a solid weekend, looking at the fact that, 3 hours before the game, it was coming a nice hard rain, and had been raining for several hours, but you got lucky and it cleared off just in time for the game.
Yep, and obviously Tennessee would like to get another commitment if they could in the month of May before it cranks back up in June. June's certainly going to be very interesting. We have a ton of recruiting coverage coming up in the next few days. We talked to a number of guys. We'll have stories up on those guys. We're going to see a good number of guys across the state of Tennessee, talk to some guys there. Austin looks at it. I mean, everybody talks about, well, this year's it's a really good year in the state, and unlike any other year. The fact of the matter is this state's producing quality guys every year. And that's certainly the case, not only in 22, but 23 and 24. And we saw Tennessee on the Twitter world try to, talk about their what they're doing in the state of Tennessee and how they got guys everywhere. Clearly a priority for them to try to get established and try to get going in 23 and 24. We've seen some offers out there. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what the 23 and 24 class look like moving forward. But I don't think there's going to be a significant drop off from the 22 class. It doesn't feel like it to me.
No, I think 23 is going to be really, really solid too. Again, they can't punt on 22 because you got to continue to work this class. But to me, they've got to get a leg up on 23, and obviously they're in a pretty good spot with Caleb Herring now that his brother Elijah's committed, and we'll see, what Tennessee does. I mean, I still think that, they've made the state a priority, Brent. That there's no doubt about it. You give them credit for that because it wasn't always the case with previous staffs, not on a consistent level. But I still think they're a touch slow to offer compared to others. And, I think that's something that you fall into the same trap that, previous staffs have, which is, feeling like, if you offer, the kid's going to just swoon and commit on the spot. It just don't work that way anymore. So, I think, you still have to be active and again, I think, if you like a kid, you go after him. That don't mean you have to take them. I mean, like, look at Alabama offered Mo Clipper. I don't think Alabama would take Mo Clipper right now, but I do think that, they like him enough to offer him and get in the mix, and then they'll get him to camp and they'll see how he does. And if he does great, who knows? And if he doesn't, then, he'll go back home and he'll still have an Alabama offer, but, just won't be able to commit there. I think you have to recruit that way. I think that's the current way of recruiting. I think that's where the game's changed. And, I think Tennessee's, best suited to go that route than they are to, wait until Missouri, Arkansas, and Kentucky have all offered a kid, and then be reactionary to that. To me, you want to be proactive and not reactive.
Plenty of recruiting coverage, as I mentioned, coming up in the coming days, in the coming week as well. So you want to keep it locked in for that. Rob, on the hoops front, Tennessee's not got a whole lot going on. It doesn't feel like in recruiting right now because they're pretty set, but obviously they're looking for one more transfer perhaps out there, it feels like. Get a chance to visit with the new assistants on Wednesday as they will meet the media and get established. Give everybody the latest rumblings on the hoops world. Anything going on to note?
I don't have a name to throw at you. I mean, every Tennessee fan wants to know what Musa Cisse, if Tennessee will chase him. I mean, the kid hit the portal 6 hours before we're taping this. I don't know right now. I think Tennessee will look into that situation, but I think that's the kind of guy that they would like is a veteran. Ideally, I think they would like a 1 year guy personally. That's a rim protector. That's a big dude that is experienced. And unless, the right one of those guys comes along, not sure that they take anybody else. I think they might be content to hold on to that last spot.
And you think this roster is pretty set? I mean, in terms of guys staying here, does it feel like?
Yeah, I wouldn't 100% rule out one departure, but if you ask me today, I think these are the guys that will start practicing in October.
What are you looking to hear from these staff guys? What's the early return maybe on Rick Barnes' new staff guys that he hired to join Michael Schwartz?
First off, I'm interested to see how they like hanging out in Pratt Pavilion all day instead of being in their offices.
It's a little bit different.
It's one thing. just kind of, I'm interested to hear like their opinions on Rick, because I mean he's different from anybody. I mean I think a lot different from certainly Wojciechowski or Sean Miller, who Justin Gainey has worked for. Rod Clark is a 28-year-old guy. I'm interested to see his take on just. I mean, 3 years ago, this guy was coaching at Sunrise Christian Academy in Kansas City. I'm interested to hear just a little bit about his background of how he in 3 years has gone to being a major, being an assistant coach at a high major university with a legendary head coach, and all the amenities you have at Tennessee compared to Austin Peay, where he was before, Illinois, Chicago, where he was before that is 1 year. So I'm interested to hear that take. And for Justin Gainey, how happy is he to be back in the South? He grew up in High Point, North Carolina. I think he likes. I think personally, just from talking to some people, I think he really is happy with this move for him and his family.
Yeah.
And early shout out to Coach Gainey. Has a senior in high school, a freshman in high school, and a 21-month-old. Talk about some range.
Yeah, that's glad it's his world, not mine. That's for sure on that. So we'll have full coverage of those guys meeting the media.
I just scheduled a vasectomy, Hubs. I'll need 3 days off 2 weeks from now.
Can you imagine?
Jeez.
Yeah, no, I'm not interested in that deal. But that's gonna do it for this edition of the podcast. We got, again, plenty of recruiting coverage coming up. We'll continue to follow hoops closely and see what's happening there in the transfer portal. And then we have a conversation with Danny White coming up later this week as well. So you want to stick to Volquest.com for that, in addition to other things going on out there. That's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. For Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday. Have a great day, everybody.